Hey guys, Mr. P. In this video we're going to talk about dichotomous keys, how they're set up, how to use them, how to make one, what they are. So let's go. So a dichotomous key is a key or a tool that is used to identify certain species based on observable traits. And we don't have to know anything about the morphology of the species. We don't have to know anything about the taxonomy of the species. We can use these tools called dichotomous keys to help us identify what the actual taxon of the individual species are. Each step of a dichotomous key gives two distinct choices that will lead users to the correct information. So if you look at this particular dichotomous key, you will see that the dichotomous key includes all vertebrates, and then it gives you a variety of descriptors. Does it have fur? Does it have feathers? Does it have dry skin? Does it have scales? And so as we work through all of these individual organisms in order to identify the taxon that they belong to. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the first section of the key, which has a pair of sentences, A and B. You'll see them here. And those sentences are going to describe characteristics. And so we're going to look at the organism to see if the particular characteristic described in the first line, A, is present in the organisms. We can just assume that this would be A, and this would be B, and C, and D. And so when we look at A, does it have fur? It's either yes or no. If it does, it would be a mammal. We know that mammals are the only taxon that have fur. That's a distinguishing characteristic of the taxonomy group mammals. If the answer is yes, then go to the end of that line and find the number that pairs to the statement in order to determine the taxon. Follow the number given and continue until the end. If the end of the line contains a name, it is the taxon for the organism. So for instance, if we were looking to classify these 5 organisms and we read the first statement and it says, does it have fur? We would immediately go, yes, it does. We would go mammal. That is in fact a mammal. If it does not, we continue down this way. If the answer is no, then go to the second statement. So that would be B. In this case, does it have feathers? If it's yes, it's a bird. If no, we continue. Does it have dry skin? Yes. It's a reptile? No. It would be an amphibian or a fish. And does it have scales? Yes. It would be a fish, or no. It would be an amphibian. Again, we work through all of these statements with a simple yes, no, and we get the taxon of these particular organisms. So, getting a little more specific on our dichotomous key, in this case, we don't have the branching form of dichotomous key, we just have the actual statements, but we still use it the same way. Over here, we have 5 organisms that are different than the 5 organisms that were given on the first slide, and right now they are labeled A through E. We can use these keys, or this dichotomous key, to help us identify not only the taxon, but the specific name of these 5 organisms. And so if we start here with A, we want to try to classify A. Body is covered with fur. If it is, go to step 2. Body is not covered with fur. Well, we know that this is a reptile, and so it is not covered with fur, so we would go to step 3. Organism is warm-blooded, or the organism is not warm-blooded. Well, we know that this is a reptile, it is not warm-blooded, and so if it is not, we would go to step 4. No legs present on the body. It's a snake, or legs present. This one does not have legs. We can specifically observe that, and so we would classify that as a snake using specifically these statements and those statements alone. We go to B, again, working through. Body is covered with fur. Go to step 2, yes. Step 2, fur makes a striped pattern, or it does not make a striped pattern. We know that this does make a striped pattern, so we can classify that as a tiger. C, again, it is fur. I know that elephants don't have as much fur as a tiger, but it is a mammal, so it is covered with fur. We go to step 2, fur makes a striped pattern, or it does not. It does not. We will classify that as an elephant. Here, it is not covered with fur, so we go to 3, organism is warm-blooded. That is true, so it is a chicken. And our last one, E, it is not covered with fur. It is not warm-blooded, so we go to step 4. It is legs present on the body, so it is in fact a scorpion. So we use these statements to classify all 5 of these organisms, and we therefore classified all of them accurately and successfully. You can use dichotomous keys to classify plants, especially around the shapes of their leaves, but shape is not the only thing. Okay, we can classify leaves based on leaf shape. We can also classify them based on leaf margins, which is the boundary and how smooth or how jagged the leaf margin is. Leaf veination is another pattern. Okay, are the leaf veins branching? Are they not branching? Do they stick out? Do they branch off of each vein or not? And then leaf arrangement. Are the leaves arranged in kind of doublets like these? Are they arranged in clusters? Are they not arranged at all in any kind of pattern? So these are ways that we can use a dichotomous key to classify leaves. Developing a dichotomous key. So here's more of a skill. How do we go about making a dichotomous key? Well, I have given you 6 individual organisms. Some of them, as we can see, are reptiles, some are birds, some are mammals, and so we can classify these, but the way that we go about doing that is we have to go through a really regimented approach. And so the first thing I would do is pick a characteristic that is easily recognizable and could divide the selected organisms in half. So if I look at these 6 organisms, what is something I could do to roughly divide these 3 and 3 or 2 and 4? And the first thing that I came up with is there are some of these organisms that are warm-blooded and some of them are cold-blooded. And I know that this isn't a 3-to-3 split, but it is a 2-to-4 split. So we have 2 organisms that are cold-blooded and we have 4 organisms that are warm-blooded. If we go further, pick a characteristic that divides the organisms in that group into an additional group, okay, or in an additional 2 groups. So if I look at my cold-blooded group, what is a characteristic that I could use to divide that group into 2 additional groups? And what I came up with was half have legs and half don't. The lizards have legs, the snake does not. So I divided that all the way through into individual categories. Okay, and then you're going to continue down until only one generation remains on each branch. So the first thing I will do over here on the right is that I would divide that roughly in half. And so half of those, in fact 2 of 4, have feathers and 2 of 4 do not have feathers. I then need to divide these 2 groups into 2 groups each. And if I take the feather group, I can divide that into yellow feathers and red feathers. And if I take the no feathers group, I can divide that into gray fur and brown fur. Now I have completely divided all 6 of my organisms into individual categories based on a few descriptors. The first group being cold-blooded versus warm-blooded. I divided that one into legs, no legs. I divided the warm-blooded group into feathers and no feathers, and then into colors of feathers and fur. Then we will provide the numbers. So this was our first branch, second branch, third branch, fourth branch, and fifth branch. And after putting those numbers to each of our branches, we're going to then enter the information into the written part of the key. So if I slide this to the side, we can then go about writing our actual dichotomous key. So we're going to create the written key by following the numbers put beside each branching point. So we obviously start with 1. So this was our 1 branch, okay, our first branch. So that was a cold-blooded versus warm-blooded. So we write cold-blooded, go to 2, warm-blooded, go to 3. Notice 1. If it's cold-blooded, it goes to 2. If it's warm-blooded, it goes to 3. Okay, so that's how our numbers were designated. On the 2 side, if there are legs or no legs, are our 2 divisions. And so the legs, this organism, we would put in the information that is a crested gecko. And then the no legs, the snake in our picture, is a copperhead. We then go over here to 3. That's our warm-blooded branch. We had feathers and no feathers, so we put feathers, no feathers. The feathers branch is going to lead us to branch 4. Go to 4. Our no feathers branch is going to lead us to 5. And then we divide our 4th branch into yellow feathers and red feathers. The yellow feathers being a meadowlark, the red feathers being a cardinal. The no feathers 5th branch is going to lead to gray and brown fur. And the gray fur is going to lead us to a raccoon, and the brown fur is going to lead us to a pack rat. That is how we develop a dichotomous key. This lecture tells us how we can go about creating and using a dichotomous key to help us provide information related to the taxon or the taxonomy of a particular organism. If you learned something, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. See ya.